What's going on, people in the MMA world throughout Asia, Australia, and New Zealand, and wherever you are sitting down listening to this? Today on the podcast, I was able to get one half of the commentator crew for Pancrase MMA, which is a big promotion in Japan and the first and longest running promotion in the history of MMA, basically. His name is Jeremy Deschner. He is originally from the States, but now has been living in Japan for many, many years. So he knows so much of what's going on in Japan with MMA, all the promotions. He goes to all the events, and he is very knowledgeable on what's going on, who the best fighters are, who are the up and coming fighters. And he talks about a variety of topics today, mainly focusing on Pancrase 287, which is coming up this weekend, and you could hear his voice with his partner uh, on UFC Fight Pass doing the commentating. But yeah, he's an awesome guy. He explains things very well, and it was fun having him on the podcast. And he'll be on the podcast, in the future. I hope, and break down not just Pancrase but deep UFC in Japan, all kinds of stuff. Anything that has to do with Japan and MMA, he can explain it to us, and we will, you know, give you as much information as possible. Well, he will, and I'll just be asking the questions. So, here you go. All right, how you doing, Jeremy?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, I always wanted to have you on the podcast because you're very knowledgeable about Japanese MMA,
Right.
and especially a lot of the fighters that fight throughout many promotions in that country. So it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, the first thing is I wanted to talk about is how did you get the gig of commentating for Pancrase?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. So basically, I was in the right place at the right time. So the very beginning of the story is I've lived in Japan for 23 years, and I've had many dealings with many people. People come over from America and whatnot, and I was working at a company one day, and a friend of mine from the United States called me from Los Angeles, and he said, a buddy of mine is going to have a seminar, and this was Shannon the Cannon Rich, who's a very famous fighter. He's coming over to Japan to fight in Pancrase, and he's going to do a seminar, and I would like you to, just as a friend, to go out there and help him and, go to his seminar and support
Did
him.
you say Shannon the Cannon Briggs?
Rich,
Oh,
R-I-T-C.
okay.
Yeah. So the thing about Shannon the Cannon Rich, you can look him up. He's been around forever. He's got over 100 fights in MMA. He's never turned down a fight, and he's also got some bare knuckle brawling experience as well. And he's actually I think he's in the Bare Knuckle Brawlers Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So he's a Jujitsu black belt, and he came over here to do a seminar. So my buddy called me up from California and said, "Would you mind going to this seminar?" And I said, "Sure, of course. I love jujitsu, and I would definitely want to support your friend." So I ended up going to this seminar, which was in Shibuya, which is about maybe 45 minutes from my house, and had a really good time, learned a lot, made a lot of friends. But while I was there, Shannon had like a handler for his fights that were coming up the following day. And this handler, whose name was Shinji, was very good at speaking English. And he came over to me and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing in Japan?" I said to him at the time, "I'm doing a podcast." And he's like, "Well, what's a podcast?" So I started explaining to him, it's just where a bunch of guys sit down, a bunch of nerds sit down, and we pick a topic and we discuss it. So the podcast that I started out with was kind of a free thinking podcast, kind of like a skeptic's free thinking podcast. And I was explaining that to him, and he didn't really get the concept. So I said, "Why don't you come out and check it out while we're recording?" And we usually do it at a bar or somewhere that has like a terrace seat. So we sit outside and drink some beers and have a conversation. So he came out and he listened to the podcast and he was like, "This is really interesting. You get a lot of hits." Yeah, we get quite a few people who check this out. And he said, "Well, would you like to do one on Pancrase?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm into martial arts. I definitely like this." So we started out doing a Pancrase Radio podcast, and I think right now we're at 15 episodes. So I don't know if I'm going to keep doing that because it's kind of very difficult to keep doing that and with my schedule. But every once in a while, I do put out an additional episode of that podcast, especially if there's some really big news. So we started doing the podcast, and eventually I was going to every show, and I started to know a lot about the fighters because I'd interview the fighters and I'd talk to them, and I'd go into their dressing room and I'd see them warming up, and I'd ask them questions, and I just got to know them, and they all started to know me. So at that time, there was another gentleman who was working as the commentator, and for some other reason or another, I'm not sure of the whole backstory. I don't want to speculate on what happened, but he could no longer work in Japan. So at that point, they said to me, "Jeremy, would you like to take the shot at being a commentator on Pancrase?" And my first show was Pancrase 279, and and ever since then I've been doing it. Every once in a while, if I'm busy, another guy takes over, a gentleman named Guy Delamo, who's also a fighter. But for the most part, it's myself and Stuart Fulton that do it full time.
All right, so what is your history of commentating? Have you done commentating before this, or is it just podcasting that you were doing?
Well, I've done podcasting, but in addition to that, here in Japan, I've been on several TV shows. I've got a background in film. Movies. I've been on a couple movies in Japan. One was a very interesting one that kind of fits in the fighting. It was a documentary film that was done by a Korean and Japanese joint crew, and that movie is called Riki Dozan, or Yoku Dozan if you're from Korea. I think you might be familiar with him. He's a Korean wrestler who actually came to Japan in the 1950s, and he started out as a sumo wrestler, but ended up becoming like a pro wrestler. And he actually is the guy who invented, the karate chop.
Oh, so really?
He would get people up on the corner buckle, and he would just start karate chopping them in the chest. Boom, boom, boom. And he was a very famous guy because he was just super violent and a huge crowd favorite. His name, in Japan, in Korea, his name was Yoku Dozan. Yoku Dozan.
Okay.
I think the name of the film in Korea reflects that name, Yoku Dozan, and in Japan, the film was called Riki Dozan.
Okay.
And that was in 2004. So I've done that movie, and I've done another movie called Tsuribaga Nishin, which is Japanese for Crazy About Fishing. So this Crazy About Fishing movie is it's a situation where this businessman, he gets a one week vacation once a year. So of course he's crazy about fishing. That's hence the name of the movie. So he goes and he gets in these weird adventures, and they make one of these every year. So it's kind of like a yearly thing for Japan where they have this big, Tsuribaga Nishin. So I was in number 16, which was also back in 2004, 2005 era. And I've done other, smaller movies and worked on, local television as well.
Yeah. When I listen to your commentating, it seems like that you have been doing it for a while. Like, it doesn't seem like you're new to it. Of course you have some background in podcasting and in film, but listening to you, it's just like even me podcasting, I'm new to this myself. And speaking and talking on the screen and stuff like that. So I have like a repetitive nature of like repeating the same thing over and over again, especially like in between sentences. Sure. So, but when I listen, because in commentating you can't do that. Like if you do that, people will be like, this guy, he needs to take the hike and stuff like that, right? Because they don't like the repetition. But yeah, you do a very good job and educate the fans on the fighters and the background stories and stuff like that, which is a little bit different, I think, in Japanese MMA compared to like the Western MMA, because some of these fighters have long histories in like pro wrestling or some kind of other martial arts, and you guys kind of fill in everybody with the information. So it's cool to hear those things, because if you don't know that and you're watching Pancrase, you just think that that's just another girl or guy fighting, right? And so it's cool to hear those things.
Well, the other gentleman who does it with me, his name is Stuart Fulton. It's S Fulton MMA on Twitter if you were interested in following him. He's a Scottish gentleman. He's got that great Scottish accent. And me and him came up with this formula where we just like kind of, we're doing commentating, but we're also kind of doing two buddies talking to each other. Whereas, you know, where we come up with the stories, like we do the research, maybe 2 weeks before the event, we're on the internet looking up like, oh, this guy fought in the UFC. Oh, this lady used to do pro wrestling, and actually she was tied in with the CEO of Pancrase when he was running pro wrestling, you know, organization. So we try to figure out where all the puzzle pieces fit, because I'm like you. I want to know where everybody's coming from and where everyone's been at in their career and what put them in this position to be in the cage in Pancrase, you know? So that those kind of little tiny tidbits of information are very interesting to me as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. It makes the fight a little bit different, and instead of just having like that, oh, this person is 19-5, and like the regular statistics, you have some other story to it, and it makes it more fun to listen to, right? And you guys have a good chemistry, and he's like you have the American accent, and then he has the Scottish accent, and it's funny. It's fun and funny at the same time, so it's cool.
There's a lot of inside jokes that we do. People who follow us on Twitter will get a lot of those. We'll take some shots at some people. We might make fun of another set of commentators. We might make fun of another. We might say like we remember this old show. Maybe from 10 years ago. We went and watched Pride back in the early 2000s or something like that. And we just do this like little kind of inside jokes. And on Twitter, if you follow myself, which is MMA JPN1. And Stuart Fulton, which again is S Fulton MMA, both on Twitter. You'll start being able to pick up on those inside jokes.
Oh, for sure. I definitely follow those things. Like do you go to all the events? Do you go to like Deep and Ryzen and to the other promotions? Do you kind of?
Yeah, actually I do. What Stuart and I also have was we run a company together. And we're slowly starting to try to take over all the commentating for all the Japanese, events in English. Right now, we've got Pancrase. I'm working on getting Deep. I'm in talks with them to see if they want to do English commentary on their channel. We're working, on other ones as well. But basically, go to almost every MMA or pro wrestling event that I can get into. And I'm married, of course, and to my wife. My wife's not always so happy that I'm gone every Saturday and Sunday. I'm either at the weigh-ins or I'm at fights or something like that. But I try to go to as many as possible. May has been crazy. I've been to Deep twice, and then this week on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday we have the weigh-ins for Pancrase 287, and then on Sunday in Japan, which will be Saturday in the States, we have the actual event, Pancrase 287, which Stuart and I will also be commenting on.
Yeah, there's some awesome fights on there. We'll get to that a little bit later, but some awesome stuff. When you go to, have you been to some of the Ryzen events?
I've been to all of them.
Okay, so when you go to the Ryzen events, and you've been in Japan for a long time, were you there during the Pride days?
Certainly was, and I actually went to Pride events as well.
Okay, so make a comparison. Because everybody's trying to make comparisons, right? They're like saying, hey, these are the guys that ran Pride, and they're like, it's the rebirth. Do you believe that is happening? Yeah,
there's a kind of a joke in Japan right now. The word Ryzen, right, sounds very close to the word in Japanese called Rojin, which is means like really old man. Like extremely old man. So they keep getting the old fighters from Pride, who are in their late 40s or early 40s coming in and they're fighting them. Like you got Sakuraba versus, Vanderlei Silva. And you got these guys battling. But it's a very good comparison because basically there was a big fallout in around 2007 era where there was a problem between Pride, K1, and Antonio Inoki, and they had like a big falling out, and there was like accusations of people making threats against other people, and I don't know all the details. I don't like to put my opinions out there. I'll just say that there was a big problem, and what happened eventually was that the UFC stepped in and bought Pride, which had its own problems as well. They ended up buying a bunch of contracts and then taking all the best fighters and keeping the Pride logo and not putting any more Pride shows on, but taking all the Pride fighters and putting them into their roster. So that was kind of weird. And I think I heard on Joe Rogan one time that when the UFC bought Pride, that they were given a bunch of contracts, and basically the contracts were illegal for some reason or another, and there was so many problems. But right now with Ryzen, the head guy is Saki Kabara-san. Yeah, Saki Kabara-san. And he was the guy who was in charge of Pride at the very end. And he set up this entire new organization. And like I said, I've been to every one of them since they started. And basically, they're putting on an amazing event. So when you go to this event, it's not just like going there to watch people fight. I'm talking about there's laser beams shooting over your head. There's lights dancing all over the arena. They've got laser beams that shoot down on the ropes of the cage, of the ring, and go around the ring and stuff like that. You've got guys with the taiko drums just in there drumming, bum, 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 bum. And there's even explosions. Like you'll get people walking down the runway, and as all the people get down there, Leon Hart will yell, "We are rising," and it goes boom, and there's a huge explosion. And that is something you just don't see in Japan. That's something from the Pride era, and then something that Rising has brought back. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing to see that rebirth, and I think that Rising, they're bringing up some of the younger guys too. And it's not just about the old guys, but they are bringing the old guys. But you know,
I love the old guys. But the thing about Pride. Remember Pride? They used to have the freak shows. You'd get like Bob Sapp versus car parking lot attendant, who high school dropout. You know what I mean? And they would just go in there and they would just like bang it out, and it's like it would just be like, am I watching a murder? And it would just be some crazy fights in there, and some of the really best fights in MMA are from the Pride era.
Oh, definitely. Like, if you have UFC Fight Pass and you miss the Pride days, you got to go back and watch. Like, if you think of Pride, like Bob Sapp versus Nogueira.
That's amazing.
Like, that's a crazy, one of the most amazing fights that you ever watch. Like Bob Sapp picking up Nogueira and slamming him on his head. And I actually interviewed Bob Sapp a few years back and asked him about that fight. And he said that when he picked him up, he was going to slam him on his head. But what he did was he just shifted to the side, and he didn't slam him on his head. He slammed him kind of on his back. But even though he slammed him on his back, he kind of powerbombed him, right? And he slammed him on his back. Yeah, and his neck was messed up after that. He wasn't the same, they said, after that, Nogueira.
Yeah. Well, you take that kind of concussion, it does stuff to you. I mean, we're always talking about with fighters, like you've only got a certain amount of concussions you can take, and eventually it starts to change it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a guy who gets knocked out really bad. He's never quite the same again. We see that all the time.
What is one fight from Pride that you would recommend somebody to watch if they had UFC Fight Pass?
Yeah, there's one where a gentleman called Yarbrough, his last name is Yarbrough, I forget his first name, but he was like 600 pounds. He was touted as the biggest MMA fighter ever. He's 600 pounds, and he ended up fighting a small Japanese guy. That's a great fight. So if you ever get a chance to watch that fight, go and watch that, because the little guy wins. He ends up getting under. Yarbrough falls on top of him, so he ends up escaping, pushing his way out. He ends up escaping. And then he ends up, just using technique to actually defeat the guy. And Yarbrough gasses, of course, within the first 2 or 3 minutes.
Was Yarbrough a black guy?
Yes, I think he was African American. He was just enormous. I think he's passed away now.
Yeah,
passed away a couple of years ago. But he was just an enormous guy.
Yeah, awesome. Like, I guess Ryzen is talking about Ryzen, they're kind of focused on having this bantamweight tournament.
Yeah.
And of course they're gonna have like Horiguchi, the big names come out. But who are some of the guys you think should be in that tournament? Because what they said was they're gonna try to collect all the best bantamweights in Japan.
I mean, bantamweight's a huge era. So I mean, the main 3 in Japan, you're going to have feather, light, and bantam, right? Those are going to be like the main. You don't really have so many heavyweights. I mean, you got you got some guys like Yushin Okami, who's an amazing fighter who now fights for Pancrase. But it's a hard call who's going to be in bantamweight. There's a guy named, I think his name is Tenshi, which is like Angel.
Oh yeah, he's a beast.
He's a beast. He's going to be good. If we get him in there, I'm not sure. He might be bantamweight. I'm not quite sure. I don't have my notes right in front of me, so I'm not quite sure. But yeah, if he gets in there, that would be amazing.
Crazy striker, right?
Yeah, and there's another guy who won in the last Ryzen. His name is Yachi.
Yachi, yeah, former PXC featherweight champion.
That guy is amazing.
Yeah.
Also, he's really cool because I go in the back and I talk to him, and he's just all smiles, and I mean he's just really cool to hang out with and stuff like that. Yeah, but he's definitely one to keep your eye on. The last guy he fought was Khrushchev, and he ended up sleeping that guy.
Yeah, he was doing really good. I was really impressed in that fight. The last one, Yachi's fight.
And the one before that, he ran across the ring and just did a flying knee, boom, knocked the guy out in like 3 seconds of the first round. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. What about Yamamoto? Like Kid Yamamoto and all those guys?
I've met Kid Yamamoto. Kid Yamamoto is an interesting character. His entire family is famous for wrestling and for fighting. He's got his own stable of fighters, and he's putting people in right now. He's not actually fighting himself. I saw his sister Miyu Yamamoto fight in Ryzen on the same card. Miyu's son Arsen was also on that card. Both end up losing by armbar, right? Yeah. So both mother and son lost by armbar. But Kid Yamamoto, the Yamamoto name. In MMA, those guys are gods of MMA, and anyone they put out is going to be right up along the same status as them.
Yeah, his sister is on MILF status. Like people are they're talking about her.
She used to be married
so young.
She used to be married to Ensign Inoue, right? So she's Ensign Inoue's ex-wife.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. So that's their son?
No. You should ask him about that. I don't know that question. Yeah. I just know the answer is no, but I don't know the situation. But if you ever get a chance to talk to him or her, feel free to ask them.
Oh, for sure, I will. Like we were talking about other promotions that you go around and you watch and you kind of basically investigate what players are out there and what fighters are doing their thing.
Right.
You were just recently at the Deep Impact, right? Deep Impact other day.
I went to Deep Impact and I also went to Deep Jewels. Deep Jewels was last weekend.
Oh yeah, Deep Jewels. That's what I was thinking about. Okay, so Deep Jewels, you got some legit fighters, competing on that card, especially Queen Reyna. So what do you know about Queen Reyna? What can you educate us on about her?
First, it's King Reyna.
Oh, okay, King.
Yeah. So she's a female, but yeah, she goes by King, and she always wears like the king's cloak with the fur at the top and at the bottom it's all red. She wears a crown, and she comes out holding a giant lollipop and a teddy bear. The giant lollipop represents her sponsor because she's always eating like some kind of lollipop candy while she's doing interviews. Yeah, so it's like her little gimmick. But the key fight on that card, on the Deep Jewel 16 card, was the very first fight, which was Momo Shimizu versus Momoko Yamazaki. So Momo Shimizu is a 12-year-old little girl, and Momoko Yamazaki is a 24-year-old professional fighter. She's got five fights under her belt. I think her record is at the time she went into that fight, her record was 2 wins, 3 losses. So not a great record, but still, ring experience means a lot. And then again, you're talking about a 24-year-old woman versus a preteen, a 12-year-old 6th grader, basically, right? Yeah. So if you're a father out there and you're thinking, oh my God, would I let my little beautiful angel go into the ring and fight? Maybe guys like from the West, they might say, that's a child, they're not supposed to fight. They're not supposed to be fighting an adult. But, I think about it, the big picture. You've got people in other countries, when they're going into their adulthood, they got to go through rites of passage. In African countries, they make scars on their chest or scars on their face to show, they've gone through the pain. They may put bullet ants on them or something like that to show that they withstood the pain and they're men and they've gone through the rite of passage.
Those neck things. Those neck things,
Yeah, those neck things, right? So, I think in a country like Japan, where martial arts started, where martial arts and the Bushido and the samurai blood flows, man, it's kind of a rite of passage when your daughter comes up and tells you, look, Dad, I've been training all this time. I want to go and I want to compete. I want to be an MMA fighter. So what's the dad going to do? He's seen her train in the gym. He knows her coach. He talks to her coach. The coach says, I think she can do it. So the coach sets up a fight for her. And the first person to take the fight is this 24-year-old, fight professional fighter. That being said, the ring was dark and they walked in there. I looked at the first lady, Yamazaki-san, as she walked in. She was full of confidence. She had a little kind of dance show where she's dancing and doing all this kind of cool stuff before. And she's wearing some kind of old-fashioned dress and jumping up and down. And she comes to the ring and she's full of confidence. And then the next one comes out, the blue corner comes out. It's Momo, the little girl. And she's all timid and small looking, and I'm looking at her face. I'm like, man, that's just a baby. And just see her get into the ring, and she's kind of quiet and just standing there. And they put her headgear on. The next thing you know, they're ringing that bell, and that little girl, she jumps up and grabs Momoko in a clinch, right? And as soon as she gets her in a clinch, she hooks her leg, takes her down, and once she's got her on the ground on her side, she works her way to the back. And immediately, boom, sinks in that arm under her neck for the choke and then locks it up and puts the hand behind her head. And this just works into position. So Momoko Yamazaki tried to get her off. So she's pulling on that arm. But in fact, she's pulling on the wrong arm. She's not pulling on the arm that's behind her head like here. You should try to pull this arm down. She's pulling on this arm. This arm doesn't mean anything because if you don't have this hand behind your head, you can't choke them. So she's pulling on the wrong arm. And she ends up putting Momo into the corner buckle, so Momo's back is to the corner buckle, and that allows her to have a little bit more stability where she could sink that choke in a little bit deeper and push a little bit more with her chin on the hand that's on the back of her head. And you see, the look on Yamazaki's face just go into, eyes go, like that, and she's like, oh my God, this choke is in. And she falls to her side, and the little girl, Momo, rolls onto her own back, and just has that choke in, puts her hooks in, and stretches out her stomach. So Yamazaki-san's completely stretched out and completely choked out. And then by the time that bell rings, she was completely out. And the ref pulled her arms off, and they had to get the doctors in there to make sure she was okay and check her out. So the 12-year-old girl won that fight in the first round with barely taking any shots herself. Amazing fight.
Damn, she just went in there and just murked her, huh? On the
Murked
ground.
her, man. And I was so impressed. I'm like, this little girl's going to have a career ahead of her. She just keeps training. And I looked up her little history online. There's not a lot about her because she's a kid, right? I don't want to be a creepy guy looking up little kids online, right? So I just looked up what I could find, and it says that she trains in karate and in jujitsu. She trains 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. So that little kid, she's put in the hours. And she's legit. Everyone, I saw a lot of people online saying, oh, it's fixed, it's a work. I was sitting there 10 feet away from it. It was not a work. I saw it was legit.
Well, a lot of people were hating on this matchup before it even happened. And, you had, big publications out there kind of, ridiculing, and putting a negative, spin on this matchup. But this matchup was an amateur fight. They had headgear, they had huge gloves, right? They had the huge MMA gloves, right? Yeah. So, what do you think about that? What do you think about do you think that's just clickbait? They're just trying to get people to click on it to see or what do you think about it really?
Well, everyone's got their own opinion. I think, we can go to karate tournaments, taekwondo tournaments, and you can see little kids fighting, 5-year-old kids fighting, and no one says anything about that. But if you put her in a ring against another person, even though the person's an adult and has 5 fights, still, if you look at the skill set and you look at the size and the weight, they're evenly matched. They're pretty evenly matched. I look at the weight of those. They're both like 89 pounds, maybe 80 or 89 to 90 pounds. They're not very big women at all. You're not really going to have a lot of huge one-shot knockout power, especially wearing those thick gloves and headgear. Right.
Well,
so I think
even like if you go to like taekwondo tournaments and you see some of those kids that have been training since they're like 4 or 5 years old and they're 12 years old now, they're able to knock people out with their feet.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. So when you look at it like that, it's her going and taking her down and choking her out is not really that big of a deal. They just kind of blow it out of proportion.
In grappling, nobody really gets hurt, right? Grappling, you may get slept. Someone may knock you out just by choking you, but then you shake their feet and they wake up and are like, well, that sucked. And they touch gloves and they're like, well, there's always next time. But in like taekwondo tournaments, you can get your nose broke. I've seen people who've gotten their eye
orbitals.
Orbitals broken. I've seen all that happen. I've seen people lose teeth. Remember the very first UFC? That big Samoan guy took a kick to the mouth. He took a roundhouse to the mouth. His tooth went flying.
Yeah, I can't believe he wasn't wearing a mouthpiece. That's just crazy to me.
No. That guy's amazing, right? Because he's a star. He's on Hawaii 5-0.
Oh, is that the guy?
The guy. Yeah.
No way.
Go back and watch UFC 1, and you're like, huh? That's the dude on Hawaii 5-0. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, that's crazy how he took that, getting his teeth knocked out, and now he's in Hollywood.
Yeah.
On a syndicated show or something like that. So it's cool. But yeah, Momo reminds me of this girl. I went down to Bangkok a few months back, and have you heard of Full Metal Dojo?
No, but I know in Bangkok they'll fight 5-year-old kids, all the time.
Yeah, but Full Metal Dojo is an MMA promotion in Bangkok, and they have the fights in a nightclub, and the ring and the cage is a little bit smaller, but like a lot of legit guys go in there and fight in that promotion, and the energy's really high level. It's cool. But they had this girl, I never seen her before, but she's fought professionally, and she's only 16 years old.
Right.
And her nickname is Thunderstorm.
Wow.
Because like Thai names are hard to say. They're really long and they're hard to say. And she fights out of Mr. Cock Gym.
Wow, okay.
So her name is Thunderstorm, right? So she goes in there and she's fighting this other girl. I think she's probably like 18 or 19, a little bit older than her. Right. And she goes in there and she basically thunderstorms the other girl, like on the feet, gets to the ground, chokes her out, right? And she was only 16 years old. Right. In a country like even Thailand, where they've had Muay Thai since the country has been started, right? It's like not a big deal. But I guess in Western countries, they want to make it a big deal when, like girl, especially I think it's because it's a girl.
That's kind of masochistic, but yeah. As being a father, when I see a little kid, I always want to protect the little kid, regardless if it's a boy or a girl. That's the father in me,
Yeah, for sure.
I always want all of them to be happy. You want to go get ice cream, let's all be happy, right? Yeah. But, you mentioned Thailand, and I saw a Vice documentary one time. I think it was a Vice documentary. But there's people over there who've got their family, and they've got 2 or 3 kids, and those kids are like between 5 and 12 years old. And the way the family makes money to eat is they send those kids off to fight. And they go to the ring, and then the father bets money, and then when the kid wins, then he's got enough money to feed everyone, pay the rent. So, I mean, it's kind of a cultural thing. That's what I was getting at earlier, when people from the West or, Western culture try to apply their morals to like what other people are doing, this is child abuse. No, not really. When I was a kid in 1970s, 1980s, you'd go out riding your bike, you didn't have to wear a helmet. But now, every kid riding a bike is basically wearing a helmet, right? So, I mean, everything changes. It's all relative to where you are and where you live.
I think nowadays kids grow up without fighting at all.
Right.
Like there's no like you go outside and you play and then you get into arguments and you know basically you fight in the playground. You know, I don't think kids do that anymore really. Because I
Correct.
remember I remember fighting in like third grade elementary school and getting bloody noses and busted lips, you know, and just going back out the next day and just having fun again, you know. But I think nowadays kids don't have that, and parents are somewhat overprotective of their children too much now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess it's more of a it's a big cultural thing at the same time. But I don't know. I think it's cool if the parents allow it. Why not?
Yeah, I was the same as you. I mean, when I was a little kid, we all like would hang out with other kids and stuff like that. And then, like for example, I'm from Texas, so we had the WCCW, which is our a local wrestling group, which is defunct by now. But the famous people out of that group was the Von Erichs. So I was a big David Von Erich fan. So like another kid would be, I'm a fan of the Freebirds, and those guys are mortal enemies in the pro wrestling ring, right? So automatically, me and that kid became enemies, and we'd have like matches and stuff. You know, we'd wrestle and you know dig holes, make forts. You know, I think you're right. I think kids these days are a little bit coddled and they play too many video games and they don't go outside and scrap like we used to.
Yeah, I remember putting on all that taekwondo gear. You know, the chest protectors and the shin guards and the gloves, and going out to the backyard and just basically sparring each other, even, you know, with the little knowledge that we had of taekwondo,
Right.
and even hurting each other, but it was just all good, you know, it was just part of being a kid.
Yeah,
I don't think kids do that anymore.
Yeah, you wouldn't cry because you didn't want your friend to see you like you were hurt, and you say, "Oh, I'm good. Yeah, that was a good shot." Yeah. Then you was like, "No, I'm not crying."
Yeah, you just go to the bathroom.
Yeah, it's just some of mine. I gotta go to the bathroom.
Yeah, another in the main event of Deep. Yeah, we're going back to King Reyna.
Oh yeah.
Kind of give your assessment of King Reyna, because she's fought in Ryzen and now she's fighting in Deep.
Yeah.
What do you think of her?
I think she needs to go international. I think the UFC needs to open their eyes and see what they've got there. She's ranked number 3 in the world in women's MMA in the lightweight division. And I've seen her fight a few times now. And she fought in Ryzen. She fought against Jazzy, who was a giant pro wrestler. She was in a little bit of trouble at the beginning of that match because Jazzy was good on her feet. And in my opinion, if Jazzy had kept that match standing, she had a better chance of winning, because King Reyna is excellent on the ground. She's tough standing, but she's even more deadly on the ground. So once Reyna got tired of getting punched in the face, what does she do? She double legs her, takes her down, passes guard, and then starts working for ground and pound from there. That's basically her style. The same thing happened in the last event for Deep. She stood for a little bit with Handel. I think she fought Handel, right?
Yeah.
So the lady from German Top Team, she fought her, and it started out. The German competitor was very strong standing. She hit her with a couple good combinations, and then once King Reyna gets tired of getting hit in the face, she double legs you, takes you down, passes your guard, and then works to get mount. And once she gets mount, she's going to end it from there. And that's exactly what happened in the last Deep, and it was a good fight. Both competitors put up a really good fight.
Well, I think that she has to, get a little bit more experience, in my opinion. But she's on the right path. She has everything that she needs to become a star, and she just needs to develop her tools a little bit better. Probably, like you said, her stand-up is not as polished, so she probably needs to get that, get better at that and train more in the stand-up aspect. But hey, if she could get everybody to the ground and just beat their face in, I don't mind watching that at all, every single time, That's kind of fun to watch. A girl that just goes in and not like Ronda Rousey would just go in and take them down and armbar them, right? But watching a girl go in there and taking someone down and just beating their face in is a whole nother, level.
Yeah, Ronda's take on fighting was pretty interesting. She did the old Karate Kid charge in with your face wide open, and that worked until she met Holly Holmes, right? Because Holly Holmes like, what? boop, 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 and then that was the end of her, right? And then the next fight as well. Once that she'd been beat, it's like the 4-minute mile. Once that someone had beat her, then she kept being beat because they figured out her game. Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, Reyna, if she's 20 years old, if she polishes her game like you said, works on her stand up a little bit more, gets more confident. I think the big thing you see in a lot of Japanese fighters, the average fighter doesn't use a lot of head movement. You don't see a lot of head movement. You'll see a lot of like 1, 2, 3, 4, plodding forward, flat-footed. But once you get to the more elite fighters, you'll start seeing them with the head movement and with the bobbing and the weaving and then throwing combinations. But Reyna doesn't do that at the moment. Reyna does not do that at the moment. She just kind of goes, kind of just plots forward, right? So if she got a good boxing coach, a good striking coach, and just worked on that for maybe 4 or 5 months, because her jiu-jitsu's sick. That's fine. Just keep training jiu-jitsu, but keep it at a maintenance level 2 or 3 times a week. Start focusing on boxing. Start focusing on the striking. Learn to throw that jab. Learn to keep your elbow down and just roll your shoulder into it. Those little tiny things. Learn to circle off your back leg. Cut the ring. Don't go straight back. Those kind of little tiny details that boxers know instinctively. If she learned that, she would be a force to be reckoned with, I think.
Yeah, and she's only 20, so that just leaves so much time for her to. Because imagine like her dedicating herself for 3-4 years, and her at 24 years old, that's still so young.
Yeah.
And going to the highest level, because right now, if she did, let's say she did go to the UFC, they only have the featherweight division, so she would have to fight at the featherweight division, and most of those featherweight divisions fighters are all strikers.
Yeah.
And I think she would get lit up pretty bad.
Yeah, I think she might get lit up pretty bad, but I think she's on track for that. I think the UFC needs to keep their eyes open and keep watching her. I would hate to see what happened. I would hate to see the same thing happen to her that happened to what I think happened to Kita Okasan. Are you familiar with Kita Okasan?
No.
He fought in Pride. He's fought in Pancrase. He's fought in Deep. He's fought in Ryzen. And he's an awesome fighter.
Oh, Kita Oka, he's the champion.
He used to be a champion. Yeah, but he's a champion in Ryzen now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I know he won his last fight in Ryzen for sure, but
he beat Crookshank, right? Is that the same one?
Crookshank got beat by Yachi last time.
Yeah, but before that he lost by submission to Kitaoka. Was it Kitaoka?
I don't know. I know Kita Okasan won his last fight and he broke his hand during that fight. I can't remember. I'm sorry. It's just slipped my mind at the moment. But
Kitaoka is the one that's kind of like has that crazy reputation.
Crazy eyes, right? The crazy look around like that. Sometimes he'll wear like one of those surgical masks and he'll just be the crazy eyes looking all around.
Yeah, I think he's the deep lightweight champion right now.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's really good at the age that he's at right now, and he's still fighting at the level that he's fighting at. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, because he started. You can go on YouTube right now and watch old Pride fights with Kita Okasan in it. He fought in Pride, so he's been fighting for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably 17 to 20 years, right? So I think that my point was that I was going to get you earlier was that the UFC kind of overlooked him all the time because I think he would have been a prime guy to actually take at a certain point and move him into the UFC, but that never happened. But I was just saying I hope that doesn't happen to King Reyna like that too. I hope the UFC keeps their eye on her, and when she's ready to go, they move her.
Yeah, I hope that I always want to see the younger fighters that are coming because it's so now MMA is like the popularity is rising so quickly, and then kids are starting at such a young age that you got 20-year-old kids in Japan or Korea or any other Asian country that are coming up, and I just want to see, because what you want to see is you want to see a champion. You want to see a champion from like the ground up, like let's say King Reyna, you're watching her now, and then you watched her all the way through her career and become a champion in the UFC or become a champion at Ryzen or something like that. It's cool to be a part of, I think.
Yeah, as a fan, you do feel like you're part of it. Yeah. I feel like I'm part of it. Even as a commentator, when I'm at a deep event as a press member, I feel like I'm part of it. I've been watching her since she was a high school girl. Coming up fighting. So it's amazing, right?
Think of Momo.
Yeah. Remember when she was just 12?
Yeah. Like you're like the Oko, you know, like I knew the whole time. Yeah, let's move on to this weekend.
All
You
right.
know, this weekend is Pancrase 287.
Certainly
We
is.
have two title fights. So let's start with the first one, which is Suri Kondo
Yeah.
versus Kimberly Novas,
Tavares. All right. Just a second. Let me pull that one up.
which is the strawweight
Yeah.
title, right? It's
Right.
vacant right now, correct?
Um, I think the strawweight title, yeah, it's vacant at the moment. Right? I'm pretty sure it's vacant at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got Kondo,
Yeah.
and you know, break down Kondo.
So, okay, let me tell you about Shuri Kondo. This girl has got everything it takes to become a star. She's got the looks, she's got the wrestling, she's got the striking, she's got the cardio. Right now, she's on a 4-fight winning streak in Pancrase since she made her debut. Right, she's fought some really good fighters. She fought like notably like Asakura Kana, who fought in Deep last week, and also who fought in Ryzen, who's another good girl that you should keep your eye on, a good fighter. Shuri, she's got a background in pro wrestling. She just started doing professional like MMA recently, and she's actually has a history with the owner and the CEO of Pancrase, Sakai-san. Before he was the CEO of Pancrase, he used to run a pro wrestling organization, and Shuri was his star for that pro wrestling organization, and she has a huge following that followed her over from that. So it just made sense, you know, here in Japan. Once he took over Pancrase, he brought all his main stars over to help him make it successful, and all those fans follow as well. She's got mostly decision wins. She's only got 1 KO, but she hasn't lost yet, and I think she's been taking on some pretty serious fighters. Now, the lady she's taking on this time, Kimberly Novaes, she's got more fights. She's got 9 wins and 2 losses, and a lot of her wins are by KO. So I think looking at her record, it says 4 KO wins and 5 decisions. So that means that you're going to see a fighter who likes to knock people out. I don't know if Shuri has had this kind of fighter before. She's faced mostly grapplers up until this point. So the strongest person she's faced in boxing would have been like a Sharma from a few months ago. But she ended up taking her to the ground and actually pounding her out, and the ref ended up calling that fight. So it's going to be an interesting fight to see if the Brazilian can come here to Japan and make her Pancrase debut and against one of our biggest stars.
And win the title at the same time. That's a big feat to accomplish.
That is a big feat to accomplish. But, I mean, we're going to see what's going to happen. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be great.
Yeah, Novaes, she's the biggest thing I think with her is that of course she's gonna want to keep it standing against Kondo, because if you see Kondo's fights, she's gonna take you down and try to pound you out that way or even submit you, right?
Right.
Even though she doesn't have a submission, I'm pretty sure she's looking for the submission, on the ground. So it's gonna be interesting. Like, can she defend Kondo from taking her down? Is Kondo going to be able to take the punches?
Right.
Can she take the power of Novaes? So it has some little intricacies that makes it unique. Do you think it's a plain and simple striker versus grappler?
What I'm looking at here is the main difference between these two young women is the height difference. Okay, so the weight is basically the same, but the height difference is going to be interesting. Kondo is actually a little bit taller. She's about 3 inches taller than Novaes. So what I would suggest, if I was Novaes' coach, I would say what she needs to do is she needs to stay on the inside and work the body, work punches to the body, and then if she sees like Kondo going for a clinch, push off and then get back out. Because I think Kondo's going to definitely want to take you to the ground. I think Kondo's strongest on the ground with her pro wrestling background, but her striking can't be overlooked though. So if I was Novaez's coach, I would say get in, work the body, and then get back out.
Yeah, it's 5 rounds, 5 minutes, 25 minutes. So,
Long.
Do you think it's gonna go the distance?
It's a good question. Looking at their records, I know that Kondo, she's got mostly decisions, so that shows you she can go the distance. Same thing for Novaez. She's got 5 decisions on hers. That's 56% of her fights are by decision. 5 out of those 9. So it can go the distance. I wouldn't want to be fighting for 25 minutes. I say try to knock them out and try to win. One thing that I have noticed though with a lot of promotions here in Japan, if you're a foreigner coming over here and you're fighting against a Japanese fighter, your best bet is to knock them out. You never want to let it go to the judges because no matter what country you're from, it's always going to go to the hometown person, right? The advantage goes to the hometown person. So I think the best strategy to come over here as a fighter is to try to knock out your opponent as quick as possible.
All right. Well, hopefully, I think it could turn into a brawl, to be honest with you. Like you said that her Kondo's striking is not too bad, and Novaez is known to knock, her opponents out. So, and she's 3 inches taller, which makes a huge difference. Yeah. So they might sit there and brawl for a while in the beginning of the fight, and that would be awesome to watch. Yeah. If they just stood and went toe to toe.
Definitely going to be one you don't want to blink on, right? You never know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Because you never know. Novaez, she could have sick jiu-jitsu. She's Brazilian, right? So, that's what we expect. Like
it goes with the territory. Yeah, it goes with the territory.
All right, so now moving on to the main event. You got, the bantamweight title on the line. So, can you tell us about Rafael Silva?
Yeah, this guy's a killer. He's got awesome cardio, but he's also got striking and knockout power. He's got 28 fights, 28 wins, 5 losses on his record. 8 of his wins are by KO, and 7 by decision, 13 by submission. So you're looking at a guy who likes to punch you in the face, and he might rip your arms off or rip your legs off as well. I've seen him actually pick up his opponent before and slam them down on their heads, just like we were talking about, like Bob Sapp. I've seen him do it. He does have the power to do that.
All right, so he has do you think that he has a good chance of taking out the champion?
He's got his last fight. When I saw him fight, I think he fought Victor Henry last, I believe. Victor Henry has got some really, really good striking and excellent wrestling, catch wrestling skills. And I saw Victor. What I thought happened is I thought Victor Henry actually beat him in that fight, right? So it went to the decision, but the judges ended up giving it to him. I don't know why. I think he had a couple good up kicks against Victor Henry, but overall, if you're judging a fight, a couple up kicks and just holding someone doesn't really make a fight. It's overall damage, overall control should actually be the thing that wins the fight, if you're asking me. And I didn't see that out of Silva. I saw a lot of holding. Now, the guy he's facing this time, Shintaro Ishiwatari, he also fought Victor Henry, and he beat Victor Henry fair and square. It was a good fight. Both men, strong competitors, Victor Henry and Ishiwatari. So, since the fight that Ishiwatari put on to Victor Henry was kind of like just more one-sided, I think the champ has more of a chance to win this fight than Silva, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I don't know. He's been holding on to that belt for a while now. So
Correct.
he's a proven champion. He's been through some wars. And the crazy thing is, Silva is from the Tapology, rankings. Silva is ranked higher than the champion in Japan.
Yeah, amazing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about Ishiwatari is Ishiwatari has fought many foreigners, so this is not a new thing to him. It's not like a lot of the Japanese fighters, the first time they fight a foreigner, they're going to be like a little bit shell shocked because it's a different skill set, it's a different attitude, it's a different muscle set. It's all different. But Ishiwatari has seen this many times. I think he fought Brookins, he fought Victor Henry. I know he goes to Thailand to train sometimes. He goes to Singapore, and he also goes to like Guam to train as well. So it's not going to be something new for him. All he has to do is just keep doing what he's done so far to retain his belt.
So if you were to make any predictions on these two title fights, what would your predictions be?
Okay, I'm saying for the female fight, the women's fight, Novaez versus Kondo, I'm going to say Kondo wins it by decision. And for the Rafael Silva fight versus Shintaro Ishiwatari, I think Ishiwatari is gonna win also by decision.
Okay, so you see some long dragged out fights and back and forth, and they're just gonna pull it off. Do you think it's gonna be more dominant, or is it gonna be a very close fights?
I think for the female fight, it's going to be a very close fight. But for the Silva fight, it's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be pretty even. But I think Ishiwatari is going to edge him out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, also on the card is a familiar name to a lot of people in MMA, which is Hatsu Hioki, right? He seems like after he got cut from the UFC, he's been making little appearances here and there, mostly for Pancrase.
Right.
Now, what is his status, do you think?
I'm not sure what his ranking is right now in the featherweight division, but that division itself is very, very, very solid. You got a lot of good fighters in that division. The thing about Hioki is he did go to the UFC, and I think that when Japanese fighters go to the UFC and then come back to Japan and fight in local promotions, that they have a little bit of an edge on the guys who haven't been up to the UFC level of competition. The guy he's fighting is a little bit older than him. The guy he's fighting is called Tanaka, Hiroshige Tanaka, also known as Hanzo. He's 35, and he's got a little bit of experience. He's got 11 fights. He's got 11 wins, 4 losses, whereas Hioki's got 29 wins and 9 losses and 2 draws. So I think ring experience-wise, Hioki has an edge on him. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Hioki comes from a really good dojo that's well-known here in Japan called Alive. And Tanaka-san also comes from a very well-known shooting gym here in Yokohama. So this is definitely going to be a good fight. It's going to be hard to say. I think experience-wise, I think I would have to go with Hioki as the winner of this fight.
All right. Do you think he's kind of like become a gatekeeper in that, since he's like kind of like in limbo? He's like in between. He's not like the highest level, but he's not the, if he fights guys that are up and coming, he'll probably beat them. So what do you think? Do you think he'll be able to move up and challenge for the title?
I think he's at a special place in life right now where if he performed really well for his next 2 or 3 fights and like opened some eyes around the the cage, he could do really well. But then again, he might just be at the point where he's 33 years old. He might be thinking about, what, I could probably just make a job doing seminars and training people. It depends what his motivation is and how his next few fights go.
Myself personally, I think that he doesn't have that exciting style that some of like a Yachi. He doesn't have that Yachi style.
Right.
Where like even if he does win, it's not like you said, it's not. I don't think, in my opinion, that he's gonna open people's eyes, because he does already have a name. But it's not like people are gonna be like, wow, did you see him at the last fight? The last Pancrase. I don't know. I don't think that will happen. And it sucks to say, because he's been around for so long, and he's fought everywhere. So, but I think it's time for the young guys. The young guys to come up.
There's a lot of good fighters coming up these days. I mean, Pancrase is the thing to watch. Keep your eyes glued to that, because a lot of those guys, I think right now, as it stands, we've sent over 122 fighters to the UFC. So Yeah, that's a lot of people. But, Pancrase is the oldest MMA organization in the world. It started in September 1993, and the UFC started in November of 1993. So technically, Pancrase is the oldest and the longest-running organization. So a lot of people got their start here.
I wanted to get your opinion on something because in Japan, they're still fighting in a ring, and then like Pancrase is in a cage. As a spectator, but and then also as just in general, how do you feel about the cage or the ring? Which one do you like better?
I prefer the cage more because a lot of the times what you see in the old ring style is you'll see people pop out of the ring and people are holding them up there like that, or they have to drag them back to the center of the ring, and I think that kind of takes me out of it a little bit, and I'm like, But if you're a smart fighter and you can use the cage to your advantage. You can actually cage walk and like flip over using your feet on the cage. So as a spectator as well, I think the cage is easier to watch because you can see through it a lot easier than having the ropes in the way. If you're doing sports photography, definitely the cage is better. So I think the only organizations over here right now using the cage, using the ring, Deep uses the ring sometimes, and Pride uses not Pride, excuse me, Ryzen uses the rings. Ryzen uses the rings, and maybe some of the smaller ones. But I think most of the places over here are trying to emulate the UFC, and they've gone with the unified rules. And, of course, the unified rules specify that you have to have a cage.
Those rules, man. Those rules, there's a lot of controversy about those rules. I love the Pride rules.
Yeah, I do too. I like the old soccer kicks and stomps and stuff like that. You see that in Ryzen. You see people stomp. You saw Reyna, another Reyna, shootboxing Reyna, fighting a girl in last Ryzen, and she got her over in the corner. And Reyna's famous for her liver kicks. She's got this nice front kick. She hits people in the liver. Well, she stunned her with that first, and then her opponent went down for a little bit, and she got her into the corner and then started stomping her. It was amazing. It's a really good fight.
One question before I let you go is, a lot of people talking, crazy, and a lot of people are saying that, MMA in Japan is dying. There's been words, like people saying, they're not doing as good as they used to, and I guess, Pride has made such a high, level, or what you call it. So what do you have to say to people that think that MMA is dying in Japan?
I'd say they're wrong. I think they've probably never been in Japan if they think MMA is dying here, because Pancrase almost always sells out. If you look at it, it almost always sells out. There's usually around 3,000 people. It's a small venue, but there's usually around 3,000 people there. It's broadcast all over the world. Their sales of DVDs, their sales of training, their memberships at the gym. They have over 800 students at their gyms. I think it's growing. It's just maybe you don't see it on TV as much because I think everyone's focused more on their local one. Because before the UFC got really big, there was only like a few organizations that did MMA. Now they're all over the world. Every city, every state's got their own small organization. Every country has their own big organization. Like you got ONE FC, you've got UFC, you've got Pancrase. It just matters where you live. People saying it's dying. Nah, don't think it's dying. You know what? It's probably growing now. I think once Pancrase makes the move to their new location, I think you're going to start seeing a lot more people being able to go to the shows, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot more people paying attention to it. I'm doing my best to get the word out. I started talking about MMA in English, trying to tell people what's happening here in Japan. I'm interviewing fighters. I'm doing on-the-spot translation. It's either me or Stuart Fulton doing on-the-spot translation when we're interviewing these guys, trying to break down that language barrier so that people from other countries can also enjoy the amazing sports that are happening here in Japan.
Yeah, when you do commentate, I noticed that. I noticed that they're talking and you're like, okay, he's saying this and he's saying that. And I was like, oh, that's awesome that you guys are right there on the spot, just, translating everything. And Jared Brooks.
Oh, amazing guy. Amazing
Jared
guy.
Brooks, right? He fought in Pancrase. His last fight actually was in Pancrase before he signed with the UFC, and he
Right.
still hasn't fought for the UFC. But what did you think about when after he fought, he won,
Yeah.
and he was talking all that shit to everybody in
It was
at
great.
Pancrase?
So the build up to that story was we had a fight. We have a fighter here. His name is Kambe-san. He's 19 years old. He hasn't lost yet, and he's an amazing fighter. He's been on hiatus for about a year due to a bulging disc injury in his back.
Mm.
But Brooks and Kambe started talking shit to each other on Twitter. So even before Brooks came to Japan, he ended up fighting another gentleman who had not lost yet either. But Brooks ended up beating him. So after Brooks ended up beating him, Brooks asked for the microphone, and he called out Kambe, and he said, "Hey, Kambe, get your ass up here in the cage." And he started calling him all the names you can think of, right? So Kambe, of course, he answered the challenge. He got up in the cage, and then, like, Brooks said some stuff to him, and then, like, Kambe says in Japanese, like, "I don't think you're interesting at all. You just kind of bore me a little bit," like that. And then they started to, like, square off and try to get in a fight, and everyone separated them, make a little show of it. Now, the interesting thing about Jared Brooks is not only is he a nice, friendly guy. I talk to him on Twitter all the time and on Facebook all the time. He's outgoing. He sells the show, and he backs up what he says with his fists and his feet. He's a good wrestler and a good striker, and he can walk the walk and he can talk the talk, right? And when he came to Japan, he talked so much trash that everyone didn't know what to do, because in Japan, a lot of the fighters are just really respectful to each other and won't talk trash back and forth. They'll say, like, "Oh, I heard you're a good fighter. I'm looking forward to meeting you in the ring. Good luck." But Jared Brooks came over here and he started going, "F you," and I'll crush your skull, and all these kind of colorful things. And they actually put out in Japan, like, the word trash talking gu, which is all one word in Japanese, because we never had that word before. We never had any word for calling other people names or talking trash about them. So they put in katakana, which is any borrowed word. They put trash talking gu. So now that became part of Japanese language. So not only did he come over to Japan and compete and do very well here, he made lots of fans, but he also changed the Japanese language. So I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is cool. I never knew that. Yeah, like I didn't even know who Jared Brooks was until that Pancrase thing happened, and I was like, "Oh shit, this guy, he knows how to sell a fight." Because at first I thought he was calling out Tsunabe, who
He
was
did.
the champion. Oh, he did, right? At that time, he was like, the funny thing was, like, he called them little bitches. So it was, and I don't think a lot of those dudes probably know what that even means. So it was
Yeah.
just funny that
No,
he just talking shit to the wall, basically.
yeah. But the thing is, like, they don't talk shit to each other. So, like, to have someone come in there and just get all excited and jump up and down and talk shit to them, everyone got excited. We're like, what? They're like, "What's going on? What is this all about?" And then they don't know how to answer that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially because he's talking in English, and then he's just going on and on and on and on and on and on, putting on a great show, and they don't really know what to say to that. So it's very interesting the way his approach. But now he's signed with the UFC, so I'm looking forward to his career. I'm sure he'll be fine. He was going to fight Ian McCall, but Ian McCall had an issue and had to back out of the fight. I heard he had a medical issue, had to back out of the fight. I don't know the details, but yeah, I'm looking forward to Jared Brooks' first fight in the UFC. That kid earned it.
Yeah, for sure. Can you tell everybody, like, where they can find you and things like that?
Sure. Myself and Stuart Fulton, we run a website called www.mma-japan.net. And we go around, we interview all the fighters, we put videos up, we put up stories, rumors, dramas, everything that you can think about that we can find out about Japan. I've got a few writers that actually do this for us, that go around and talk to people, not just about Pancrase, but also about every MMA and every pro wrestling show that happens here in Japan. You can also follow us on Twitter. My Twitter is MMAJPN1, and Stuart Fulton's is SFulton MMA. Yeah, so you can follow us there, and you can catch our banter. And if you listen to us, you comment, you can catch up on some of our inside jokes.
All right. You got Facebook and all that going on too?
Facebook, Instagram, all basically all the social media. Also, when we're doing Pancrase commentating, we also live tweet. People don't really realize this, but if you go to the hashtag Pancrase, like this one will be Pancrase 287. It's always Pancrase and whatever number it is. You'll see me and Stuart actually on there while we're commentating, live tweeting. So if you're interested in that, you can follow that as well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for coming on, and I definitely would like to have you come on as a regular, before all the Pancrase events,
Sure.
and even before the, because the UFC just announced that they're going to go to Japan later this year, and
Yep.
Ryzen. There's so much going on, and you're right there in the middle of it. You're in the middle of the war, so you could tell us, exactly what's going on. So it's so it was fun, talking to you and
Yeah.
educational at the same time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate each and every fan. Me and Stuart, we just do this because we love it. And to have someone like yourself and have the fans come up and approach us, send us tweets to saying, we like you guys, we like your comments. That really means a lot to us. And I appreciate you having me on today.
All right. Thank you for your time.
All right, take care.